message that they need to do an emergency response under the emergency response and removal grants to address the DNAPL on this one. And so, if any, unfortunately, I didn't make copies of the order, but I think we can probably make that available through Jeff Wilcox or someone, or the Facebook site. But anyway, that's what I've got to say, and I think they can do it, or they can get to it much quicker. Because, let me just say one other thing. Under any other authority, it really rests with the contaminator to negotiate and bill at their rate. And so this is the only chance for a quick response and an appropriate response.
Okay. We have to make sure that everybody signs in so that we can have an appropriate email chain that we can build on. You have a lot of inherent power in your phone and in your email and in your handwriting. If everybody in this room took 5 minutes to contact their state and federal legislators, find out what their position is on this, and understand that what Jeff has said, as long as we're talking about anything other than DNAPL removal, then your children's children will be having this conversation. So please make sure that you have signed in. This side hadn't signed in. The Facebook page that we'll be posting things on is simply the facebook.com/clean CTS info. So it's facebook.com clean CTS info. Jerry?
Just a point. All these remediation things that they're suggesting right now, we had a saying in the Marine Corps that we used whenever a response was inadequate for the situation, and it was putting a Band-Aid over a sucking chest wound.
Right.
So that's what they're proposing here.
And since we didn't ask if there were anybody that were representing elected officials, or if there were any elected officials in the room, if you are, please stand up. That would be very, very helpful to know who's come. I'll just pass this around so y'all can introduce yourselves.
Joe Belcher, Buncombe County Commissioner, District 3. Mike Fryer, Buncombe County Commissioner, District 2.
Sorry, Buncombe County Board of Education. Lisa Baldwin, the Buncombe County Board of Education.
Are there any others?
Yeah, I'm Freddie Harrell, represent Senator Kay Hagan. I'm the Western Regional Liaison, Senator Kay Hagan. I'm delighted to have with me our State Director, Melissa Midget. Thank you.
Are there any people in here running for office? Any?
John Hager, North Carolina House, 115.
I'm Miranda DeBrule. I am the Republican nominee for County Commissioner in this district, District 3.
Anybody else? Well, my name is Tate McQueen, and I do want to disclose that I'm running for the 10th Congressional District as a result of this. And the only reason I'm bringing that up, as far as having some spotlight on our elected officials as well as those that would run for office, now you know what that office is all about. And we do have representatives here that either have served at the state level, are serving at the local level, and are representing people at the federal level.
The most important thing is to make sure that our health and our environment is safeguarded. You got to get that right before you can get anything else right. So it's important for all of us to be disclosing that and understand what Jerry said with regard to the fact that this material doesn't discriminate. And sadly, there are thousands on top of thousands of sites like this across the country. This is not unique to us. I'd also like to take one opportunity to ask the people who have been displaced, who now unfortunately wear the distinct designation of being an environmental refugee in Asheville, North Carolina, that has put itself as an environmental mecca. We have 13 people right now that it is unsafe for them to be in their homes because the air is too dangerous to breathe, that they would stand up. There are Bob Taylor and Terry Rice. There are 11 other folks, 7 of them are children. 7 children that have been impacted. So for once, I'll surprise some people. I'm not really interested in talking about the history of the site. We have a distinct way of moving forward now. I think that Barry has articulated it very, very well and very cogently. There is something at the discretion of EPA, and no offense to our federal officials, EPA serves at the discretion of the president. So the president actually has the authority to circumvent a lot of that red tape. And that's why I'm so proud to say that we have become part of Dot Rice's family. I think that she has become part of ours, as well as Becky and her family. It takes a lot to write a letter to the President of the United States and ask for help. But Jerry has, going 17 years, multiple presidents now, turnover in the Senate, turnover in the House, turnover at the state level, and he continues to move forward because it was about protecting Marines, and Dot was simply asking for her Marine and his family and his extended family in our community to be taken care of. And certainly with the Janie Ensminger Act being passed, that needs to be funded so that those Marines can, so now that it has been funded, they will have access to health care and it will be paid for. We are at a crossroads. We have had a new round of information that is the same that we've been dealing with over and over again. And we have a new set of people that have come in because they are rightfully upset and scared and anxious, as we all should be. What we have to do is have that fear and anxiety translate into action, translate into something that you know when you leave here, you can do something. You don't wring your hands and shake your head. Pick up the phone, write a letter. Ask that these elected officials and those that would run for office, Tom Hill is here, he's running for the 11th, correct?
Yes. I am a candidate for the 11th Congressional District. You need to drink water, I think. But I wanted to say just a word about, when you see a mess like this, you have to ask, number one, how did it happen? And number two, how do we fix it? And it happened, we all have blame in this. Where I live in East Flat Rock, we had General Electric move in and they contaminated our wells, not with carcinogens like you have, but with aluminum products. And we welcomed them in, they're still there, and we welcome them in because we need jobs. We want the chemical products, they improve our lives. We want cell phones, things like that. But the problem is, where we fall down, is we fall for a big line of bull from the people who represent the companies that we shouldn't enforce these chicken regulations on these various companies. That we've got to get regulations, get the government off the back of the companies so they can do this, that, and the other. That's what opens the door to this. And you know, we can write letters and that's good. I encourage everybody to have hope and to keep up the fight, but you need to elect officials who will shoot straight with you and say that we will support this, we will pass legislation, we will help you fight your battle. Most elected officials won't do that. They are very good at circumventing the issues, and I don't want to drone on and on. I just want to say that I am a candidate for the 11th Congressional District, that I won the primary, that contamination site is in my district. And if I am successful in being elected, I will fight to fix this problem. I will not write you little letters and tell the EPA, well, we should do this and that, the other, and I will fight for you. That's all I wanted to say, and I thank you for the opportunity.
You all have an opportunity right now. Let me tell you, I learned a lesson about how to work an issue. Our founding fathers knew what they were doing when they made the freedom of the press. Because the media, the press, are the music that politicians dance to. You've got a window of opportunity right here, right now. This is out and way out in the open now. It's way up here. But let me warn you, those windows move. So you better jump through it before it moves out of your reach. And I'm talking, that doesn't last very long. You need to seize this opportunity right now, and you need to get a group of people, concerned citizens, and you need to get your butts up the highway to Washington, D.C. Make your appointments and go see your legislators. I'm serious. You got recess coming up. Summer recess is right around the corner. Get up there.
We're going to let our attorneys speak that represented us, that also had an impact with Camp Lejeune, Mr. Robert Dungan and Jeff Stahl. And also, I didn't mean to neglect to have Judy and Bob Sells recognized. They've been a stalwart in this effort as well with our community advisory group and done so much for us.
My name is Robert Dungan. This is Jeff Stahl. We are from Asheville. We have been representing folks in the Wahlberg case on a local level. We're also working with...
Yes, speak up.
Sometimes folks don't want to hear lawyers, but anyway. My name's Robert Dungan. This is Jeff Stahl with me. We are lawyers in Asheville that are in the current case. We work with Joseph Anderson and Doug Desjardins. I got it out right. Doug Desjardins, who is up in D.C., is kind of the legal team working on the current case. I just looked at the legislation, and as soon as I can believe Charles, I think, when he says he's a good handicapper about what will get passed. It will be what we'll be trying to do is work that in so that we can fit it into the current case so that case can stay alive. I think that it's real important in your political brain to remember that we're lawyers and we have to work with the law and the case law and then to put the facts to that when we do our work. And so legislation can change a lot. And I think it's also significant to remember that this case was inextricably linked in the minds of the powers that be because of Camp Lejeune. You must remember that the Solicitor General filed an amicus brief in support of CTS, and the Solicitor General is the administration. And every time the Solicitor General shows up at the Supreme Court, believe you me, they get the nod, because they always argue for the government. But if you do take just a moment to look at the decision that came down a 7-2 vote, read at least Judge Ginsburg's dissent. And that's another reason to be involved is because it's just a way that corporations could hide until a statute of repose is over, and then there's no action. The action in the law never existed. And that's an environmental race to the bottom, because some other state could enact even a shorter statute of repose to try to attract industry, even though you would hope that environmental laws would be enforced. And in this instance, that an action by a private citizen would be preempted across the board in all the states. So there wouldn't be any place to run to and no place to hide. And while he doesn't know I'm going to talk about him, because he's not in the room, I just want to tell you, to support Tate McQueen, this has to be his base of power so he can march eastward to Gaston County and let people know who he is, so that everybody in this county needs to vote for Tate McQueen regardless of what party you're affiliated with, because he will work to see that Circle and Sarah gets changed. And he will not agree with Tom Tillis, who says that folks in Boston should get a minimum wage that is higher than the folks in North Carolina. And he will be for the Equal Pay for Women's Act. That was all unplanned and unsolicited. Thank you very much, and we hope that we prevail in this case for you.
I don't know if we're ready to conclude the meeting, but thank everybody for coming out here tonight. We'll take some questions.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
What has been the response of the elected officials at the federal level to this problem? Who have you contacted, and what has been the response? We heard the letter from Senator Hagan. Is that her first response? And what about Representative Meadows and Representative Patrick?
I'm not familiar with any of the responses of any of the elected officials. All I know is that our local state representatives acted in a very swift manner to try to address this, and that's all we care about right now as it pertains to our case.
I saw a thing on television where Mark Meadows was challenging the EPA head of Precipio or something, and he kept right at him for about 5 minutes and said, "We expect action, blah, 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 blah." So I know he's...
And I saw the same thing where Mr. Meadows did address in a very pointed manner the inaction and non-responsiveness of the EPA.
But he changed that to be an action against the EPA generally, not against the...
That's correct.
I spoke to Congressman yesterday, and I met with him in his office, and I was very disappointed a few months ago. But yesterday, and
We can't hear.
the microphone. I've been talking to Congressman Meadows for several days, and several months ago, I met with him in his office. Jeff and I, we had a good talk with him, but he brought in the EPA to our meeting that we were not aware of. So I can say that we were really disappointed with how the meeting turned out. But this week, he has made a commitment to me that he is going to help us. And I saw the TV thing yesterday, and he appeared to be putting some pressure on them. So I guess we need to give him another chance. Linda?
Yeah, I just have a question, and somebody can take whatever the tag of us was here, and it was testing air quality on Mills Gap Road. From my memory, it was pretty high at the school bus stop, Now that they've changed the limits and lowered it, can we get that school bus?
It's been changed.
Oh,
We did that the first
Yes,
time.
ma'am.
2 hours after they were evacuated.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Do we know if any ground surveys have been done of the site or the areas adjacent to the site to see if any barrels have been buried or if there are any?
Yes, they used magnetometers, and they had buried so much rebar, steel barring in the cement whenever they added onto the building or reconfigured it, that they got so much background noise that it wasn't an appropriate tool to do that. One of our concerns is, and there was a great professor at UNC Asheville, just a real pioneer in terms of his courage. He once said the same thing Jerry said about Camp Lejeune, Dr. Richard Moss. He said that that's the worst groundwater contamination event in American history. He said that a number of years ago and passed away. One of his biggest concerns was that this had all the hallmarks of buried barrels exceeding their lifespan.
What about ground radar? I mean,
Well, you
can
see Yeah, they did do some ground penetrating radar for where we know that there are buried polyethylene barrels along the Rice property fence line. But as far as going into the building, it's really, you can't do that through the concrete and that material. We would have wanted to have the entire site screened.
One of the things that, and we actually met with EPA to possibly get some more sampling for this SVE confirmation sampling plan, but one of the things about this sampling, I mean, is that CTS essentially is dictating the sampling plans, and we've tried to get EPA to independently sample other areas. And it appears that they're pretty much complying with where CTS thinks it is. And it's unfortunate that they did not sample the whole site in a grid pattern, which would be something you would think would be a logical way to proceed. The areas that you see where you don't see contamination are also areas where they never sampled. So explain that one. So it's a very difficult thing because the way it works, the way the law works is the contaminator gets to hire their own engineers, and then they report back to EPA, and EPA reviews those. And unfortunately, our EPA in this region has just been lax in terms of willing to go beyond what the corporation is indicating that it wants to sample. And I would just say one other thing. Jerry had mentioned our region as being one of the most corporate-friendly regions or something like that. All I know is independently, I had gone to this National Forum on Vapor Intrusion. It is basically the big gathering of all the EPA people across the country. There are 10 regions of EPA. Ours is number 4. It is the largest because it takes in 8 states of the Southeast. We did not have a single representative from our division at that vapor conference in 2009. All the expertise appears to be in places like California, but as far as the brain trust in the division, it's not here. And that's the other thing that's been problematic because their experience and their expertise is through their subcontractors. And so they pretty much dictate that. But the other thing I was going to say, in my attendance at this meeting, I had a chance to talk with lots of people around the country at EPA, separate divisions, and also some state officials from Kentucky and Tennessee, and they all would kind of sigh about Region 4. Region 4 has a reputation for being the laggard region, and I think that's another thing. I'm sorry that the representative from Senator Hagan's office left, but the point I wanted to, I think it's very important that maybe can come out of this, that there can be reform at Region 4, that we can bring our region up to the same standards that the rest of the country is. And so that might be another benefit from all this public discussion about the CTS site, and it needs to happen. I'll just say one other thing. The interesting thing is the person who was here in 1999 as the on-scene coordinator is now at the top of the division for the remedial branch. That means he is at the top of managing 8 states. The person who was the on-scene coordinator Dr. Webster is now the top of the emergency response and removal branch for the 8 states. Isn't that interesting? They all came from here. And so, anyway, that's an interesting coincidence, but we're hoping that reform can happen. So anyway, I just wanted to add that.
One other thing about that, just understand, and Gibby Harris, thank you for being here from the Health Department. Thank you. Jennifer Wendell scored the site for the MPL. It had scored 5 times. The highest it ever got was 5 in 2006, and they adjusted it up to 16.5. It needs a minimum of 28.5. When they did score it to get it to the MPL, they did not score all of the exposure pathways. They only picked groundwater. They didn't do surface water, and they didn't do air, and they didn't do sediment. So as a result, when they revised the score, it was 38.4, not even 10 full points up. And as you know now, CTS is suing to come off of the MPL. If they prevail, then the state will be in control of the site. To date, the state has spent less than $150,000 at the site, and that was paid for by EPA. So I want everybody to be aware of that. The other thing about the health department and our county commissioners and our city council on a bipartisan level, we did ultimately achieve city water lines that are being installed as we speak that are going out 1 mile from the site. There are 154 people, let's scratch that, 154 meters, so 154 properties that will be served with municipal water that still belongs to Asheville. So this is a victory. They do come, and you have to be persistent, and we're going to prevail with this. Sooner or later, we have to ask you this one question, because I think you know where we stand on this. Do you have any faith or trust that the officials that Barry was describing that have matriculated up into higher positions of authority and responsibility that would control the day-to-day operations of this site would do right by us in 2014 when they never did right by us any time previous? And if they're talking about adjusting their calendar for them to start the beginnings of a cleanup action truly until 2018, then there is a major problem there. So, yes, sir.
Are there any individuals that can be held accountable for the negligence or?
I'm sorry, one more time, sorry.
Okay. Are there any individuals that can be held accountable for all the negligence and?
4 of them were issued state subpoenas. Don Rigger, Jennifer Wendell, Samantha Urquhart Foster, and Carter Williamson. In the history of the United States EPA, that has never happened. They have not responded to those subpoenas because they're citing sovereign immunity. There is a code of federal regulation under CERCLA called 103, CERCLA 103. That one is the first one that can be used to hold officials criminally accountable for withholding, altering, tampering with documents. And we believe there is a strong case for that, and we've been participating with federal criminal investigators for 4 years. But Dot Rice says she would prefer to see it go to the FBI. Yes, ma'am.
I have one question. If the House and the Senate in North Carolina are going to pass this bill, can it override what the Supreme Court has said? Does CTS then and EPA have to come in and clean up the site?
That action deals with, as far as we're affected, the suit that we had. The Marine Corps and their suit would continue to move forward. We are still waiting for clarification as to how it would impact us with our site in terms of suing CTS for the response. What Barry has been saying, and what we're saying, EPA already has that authority, and we're asking them to act on that authority and then build a responsible party and save us all the trouble. We can still hold them accountable, but we can have EPA use that National Contingency Plan Emergency Response Authority. Yes, ma'am.
Just a small question. CTS has another Superfund site. Have y'all ever looked?
CTS Printex in Mountain View, California. We have, and they fought very hard to prevent themselves from going on the NPL, and they did not succeed. They were put on California. They're in California. They're much more aggressive in that region. But they also see their property values adjust upward because they're so aggressive in getting cleanups done. Ours went to NPL, fell under the remediation branch, which is controlled by the people that didn't handle the property to begin with. So we have investigated that. They've also been responsible for contaminating their own community. Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Before y'all leave, how about a really big round of applause for Jeff Wilcox? Jeff's willing to stay for questions. We're all willing to stay for questions, but this is a real gem at UNC Asheville, and we need to support our local university and give them the credit where they deserve it. Because without Jeff, we wouldn't have a way of articulating this that has weight like he carries. So thank you so much, Jeff.
Thank you.